The silence had a weight that pressed against the soul. In the frozen wasteland that Stalingrad had become in November 1942, silence didn't mean safety. It meant death was choosing its next victim. Through the skeletal remains of what had once been apartment buildings, past the twisted metal of destroyed factories, a shadow moved with the patience of winter itself. The ghost was hunting. Vasily Zaitsev pressed his body against the rubble, feeling the bite of concrete through his worn uniform. The temperature had dropped to -20 Celsius, and each breath formed crystals that hung in the air like accusations. His fingers, despite the threadbare gloves, maintained their steadiness around the worn wooden stock of his rifle. Not just any rifle, but a Mosin Nagant Model 1891, a weapon older than the revolution that had birthed the Soviet Union. 51 years this rifle had existed, and now it had become an instrument of legend. The German machine gun nest was positioned exactly where Zaitsev had calculated it would be. Third floor of the gutted department store, behind what remained of a concrete pillar. The Wehrmacht soldiers inside had no idea they were being studied with the same methodical precision that Zaitsev had once used to hunt elk in the Ural Mountains. But these weren't elk. These were men with wives, children, dreams cut short by the machinery of war. This knowledge didn't stop him. It simply made him more careful with each shot. Through his telescopic sight, a luxury that few Soviet snipers possessed, Zaitsev could see the steam rising from the enemy position. Someone was drinking hot coffee, a small moment of humanity in this frozen hell. The sight reticule settled on a point 2 inches left of the steam. Zaitsev knew that in these temperatures, bullets dropped faster and curved more dramatically. He had learned this not from any manual, but from 47 confirmed kills over the past 32 days. His breathing slowed to match the rhythm of the dying city. Stalingrad was bleeding to death one building at a time, one street at a time, one life at a time. General Friedrich Paulus and his 6th Army had pushed the Soviet defenders to a strip of land barely a mile wide along the Volga River. The city that bore Stalin's name had become a symbol. Lose it, and the psychological blow might collapse the entire Eastern Front. The coffee drinker moved. Zaitsev's finger found the trigger with the familiarity of a pianist touching keys. The Mosin Nagant roared. Its 7.62mm bullet crossing 200 meters in less than a second. Through the scope, Zaitsev saw the German soldier collapse backward, his life extinguished in an instant that would echo through history books yet to be written. 48 confirmed kills. The number meant nothing to the dead German's mother, who would receive a letter in 3 weeks informing her that her son had fallen in service to the fatherland. The number meant everything to Soviet morale, which had been battered by months of catastrophic defeats. Zaitsev didn't celebrate. Celebration meant noise, and noise meant death in Stalingrad. He slithered backward through the debris, each movement calculated to avoid the sniper teams he knew were hunting him. The Germans had begun to call him Der Geist von Stalingrad, the ghost of Stalingrad. Soviet propaganda had seized on this moniker, transforming a 27-year-old clerk from the Ural Mountains into a symbol of resistance. But symbols didn't feel the cold seeping through their boots. Symbols didn't taste the metallic fear that came with knowing that German snipers were systematically hunting anyone who showed skill with a rifle. Vasily Zaitsev was not a symbol. He was a man who had discovered a terrible talent in the worst possible place. 3 days earlier, political commissar Danilov had approached him with an expression that mixed desperation with hope. The Soviet propaganda machine needed heroes, needed stories that could counteract the narrative of German invincibility. Zaitsev's growing tally of confirmed kills had caught the attention of commanders who understood that warfare was fought as much in the mind as on the battlefield. "The soldiers need to believe," Danilov had said, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air of the basement command post. "They need to see that Germans can die, that this unstoppable Wehrmacht bleeds red like any other army." Zaitsev had nodded, understanding the weight being placed on his shoulders. Every shot would now carry political significance. Every kill would be measured not just in tactical advantage, but in morale points scored against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable since June 1941. The Mosin Nagant 1891 had become his partner in this deadly dance. Manufactured in Imperial Russia when Tsar Nicholas II still ruled, the rifle had survived revolution, civil war, and now the greatest conflict in human history. Its design was simple, reliable, and deadly accurate in the right hands. The bolt action required manual cycling after each shot, making rapid fire impossible but encouraging the kind of precision that had made Zaitsev legendary. From his new position in the ruins of a school, Zaitsev could see the German sniper school that had been established in a partially destroyed church. The Wehrmacht had responded to Soviet sniper success by importing their own specialists, men trained in the fine art of long-distance killing. These weren't ordinary soldiers, but hunters who understood concealment, patience, and the mathematics of death. Major König, the German sniper instructor, had arrived in Stalingrad with a reputation built in the forests of Bavaria and the mountains of Austria. The German High Command had specifically sent him to eliminate the Soviet sniper, who had become such a propaganda asset. König brought with him not just skill, but a deep understanding of sniper psychology developed through years of hunting both animals and men. The duel that was developing between Zaitsev and König represented more than just two skilled marksmen testing their abilities. It embodied the broader struggle for Stalingrad, where every building fought over represented another step toward victory or defeat for their respective nations. Zaitsev studied the church through his scope, noting the positions where a sniper might establish a hide. The bell tower was too obvious. König was too experienced to make such an elementary mistake. The broken windows on the south side offered good fields of fire but poor concealment. The rubble pile near the altar provided cover but limited shooting angles. A glint of reflected light caught his attention. There, behind a fallen beam 30 meters left of the altar, something metallic had caught a ray of winter sunlight. Zaitsev's pulse quickened slightly, the only physical response he allowed himself during these moments of extreme focus. Through the scope, he could make out the outline of a rifle barrel protruding just millimeters beyond the beam's edge. König was hunting him, but König had made the mistake of hunting during daylight hours, when his scope could betray his position. Zaitsev had learned this lesson during his first week in Stalingrad, when a Soviet sniper positioned 2 buildings away had been killed by German artillery after sunlight reflecting off his scope had given away his location. The mathematics of the shot were complex. 300 meters distance, crosswind from the southwest at approximately 15 kilometers per hour, temperature effects on bullet trajectory, and the need to lead the target if König moved. But more challenging than the ballistics was the psychological component. König was not an ordinary German soldier drinking coffee and thinking about home. König was a predator who understood concealment, misdirection, and the art of making oneself invisible. Zaitsev settled into his shooting position with the patience that had made him successful. His left elbow found a stable rest against a chunk of concrete. His right hand gripped the rifle with just enough pressure to control it without inducing tremor. His cheek settled against the stock at exactly the same position he had used for every shot over the past 34 days. Through the scope, he watched for movement. Snipers, no matter how skilled, eventually had to move. They shifted position to relieve muscle tension, adjusted their aim to track targets, or simply breathed in ways that caused minimal but detectable motion. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon, more important than marksmanship, more valuable than the finest rifle. Minutes passed. The cold seeped through Zaitsev's uniform, turning his feet into blocks of ice and making his fingers ache despite the gloves. But he had learned to compartmentalize physical discomfort, to store it in a part of his mind that could be examined later when survival didn't depend on absolute focus. A Soviet artillery barrage began 3 kilometers to the north, the thunder of exploding shells providing a bass note to the symphony of destruction that had become Stalingrad's soundtrack. The bombardment would mask the sound of a rifle shot, if he chose to take it. But König would know this too, and might be waiting for exactly this moment to relocate. Through the scope, Zaitsev saw movement. Not König himself, but the subtle shift of shadows that indicated someone was adjusting position behind the fallen beam. The German sniper was preparing for his own shot, probably at a target Zaitsev couldn't see from his current angle. The Mosin Nagant's trigger required exactly 4 pounds of pressure to release the firing pin. Zaitsev had memorized this pressure, could reproduce it blindfolded. His finger took up the slack, feeling the precise point where continued pressure would send death across 300 meters of frozen wasteland. Koenig's rifle barrel moved slightly, following a target. The German sniper had found something worth shooting at, was probably settling into his own firing position. In seconds, another Soviet soldier would die. Another small victory for the Wehrmacht in their grinding campaign to capture Stalingrad. Zaitsev's shot arrived first. The Mosin Nagant bucked against his shoulder with familiar force, its report echoing off the broken buildings like a declaration of intent. Through the scope, he saw Koenig's rifle jerk upward as the German sniper fell backward, struck by a bullet that had traveled 300 meters to find its target. 49 confirmed kills. The number climbed steadily, each digit representing not just tactical success, but psychological warfare waged one shot at a time. Soviet soldiers who heard about Zaitsev's exploits fought with renewed determination. German soldiers who heard the stories moved more carefully, looked over their shoulders more often, and felt the weight of being hunted in a city they had thought conquered. The propaganda value was undeniable, but the human cost was mounting on both sides. Every German sniper killed meant that Wehrmacht commanders would send more specialists to Stalingrad. Every Soviet success provoked German countermeasures. The cycle of violence escalated with each confirmed kill, each tactical victory that came at the price of someone's son, husband, or father. Zaitsev slithered away from his firing position, moving through the rubble with the fluid motion of someone who had learned that survival depended on becoming one with the destroyed cityscape. Behind him, German soldiers would be converging on Koenig's position, would be searching for the sniper who had eliminated their specialist. The hunt had claimed another victim, but the hunt itself continued. Over the following days, Zaitsev's legend grew. Soviet newspapers, despite the desperate shortage of paper and ink, printed stories about the sniper who had eliminated 49, then 54, then 63 German soldiers. Radio broadcasts carried his exploits across the Soviet Union, giving hope to a population that had endured catastrophic defeats from Leningrad to Sevastopol. But legends are built on bodies, and the bodies were mounting. German retaliation for sniper attacks grew increasingly brutal. Captured Soviet snipers faced execution rather than imprisonment. Civilians suspected of providing information to snipers were shot without trial. The mathematics of warfare had become simple and terrible. Each confirmed kill by Zaitsev resulted in multiple deaths as German forces sought to eliminate the sniper networks that supported him. The Mosin Nagant 1891 had become an extension of Zaitsev's will, its worn wooden stock polished smooth by thousands of hands across 5 decades of service. Originally manufactured at the Tula Arsenal in 1893, the rifle had served in the Russo-Japanese War, the First World War, the Russian Revolution, the Civil War, and now the Great Patriotic War. Its steel barrel had worn smooth from countless cleaning sessions, but its accuracy remained deadly. On the 37th day of his documented service as a sniper, Zaitsev encountered his most challenging target. A German officer, identifiable by his uniform and bearing, had established an observation post in the remains of a factory office building. The officer wasn't just another target. He was coordinating German defensive positions, calling in artillery strikes, and directing the kind of tactical expertise that was slowly grinding Soviet forces into dust. The shot required crossing 400 meters of open ground observed by multiple German positions. Any movement, any glint of reflected light, any mistake in camouflage would result in immediate retaliation from German machine guns, mortars, and snipers. But the officer's elimination would disrupt German defensive coordination for hours, possibly days, giving Soviet forces a window of opportunity to advance. Zaitsev spent 6 hours crawling to his chosen firing position, moving so slowly that his progress was measured in centimeters rather than meters. The journey took him through a landscape that resembled the surface of an alien planet: twisted metal, pulverized concrete, and the detritus of modern warfare scattered across ground that had been churned by artillery until it resembled a moonscape. The final firing position was a shell crater that provided concealment from 3 directions while offering a clear field of fire toward the German observation post. Zaitsev settled into the position with infinite care, ensuring that his rifle barrel didn't extend beyond the crater's rim and that his muzzle flash would be concealed when he fired. Through the scope, the German officer appeared as a figure of authority directing subordinates with confident gestures. The range was 412 meters, according to Zaitsev's careful estimation, nearly at the maximum effective range of the Mosin Nagant under these weather conditions. The mathematics became complex: bullet drop of 18 inches at this range, wind drift compensation, and the need to account for the target's movement pattern. The officer followed a routine, moving between 3 positions within the observation post at roughly 2-minute intervals. Zaitsev timed these movements with the patience of a hunter who understood that opportunity might present itself only once. The wind was gusting from the northwest at 25 kilometers per hour, strong enough to significantly affect bullet trajectory. When the shot came, it was at the precise moment when the German officer paused to examine a map spread on a makeshift table. The Mosin Nagant's report echoed across the battlefield, its sound immediately followed by the crack of German rifles responding to muzzle flash they couldn't quite locate. Bullets whined over Zaitsev's position as he slithered deeper into the shell crater, but the return fire was poorly aimed, desperate rather than precise. Through his scope, before German smoke obscured the target area, Zaitsev had seen the officer collapse across his map. Confirmed kill number 73 had eliminated a tactical asset whose value far exceeded that of ordinary infantry soldiers. The psychological impact on German forces was immediate and measurable. Artillery barrages increased in frequency and intensity as German commanders attempted to eliminate sniper positions through massive firepower. Infantry patrols moved with greater caution, reducing their tactical effectiveness. Most importantly, German morale began to crack under the constant pressure of knowing that death could arrive without warning from any direction. Soviet propaganda seized on Zaitsev's success with increasing fervor. Newspapers published detailed accounts of his exploits, often embellished beyond recognition. Radio broadcasts carried his story across the Eastern Front, inspiring other snipers to greater efforts. Political commissars used his example to demonstrate that individual Soviet citizens could make decisive contributions to the war effort. But Zaitsev himself remained focused on the immediate tactical reality. Each shot taken revealed his position to German observers. Each confirmed kill brought him closer to statistical probability of death or capture. The mathematics of sniper warfare were unforgiving. Eventually, every sniper made a mistake, took an unnecessary risk, or simply encountered an opponent with superior skill. By December 15, 1942, Zaitsev had achieved 147 confirmed kills. The number represented not just tactical success, but a psychological victory that resonated far beyond Stalingrad. Soviet soldiers across the Eastern Front drew inspiration from the sniper who had proven that German invincibility was a myth. German forces, conversely, began to experience the kind of demoralization that preceded tactical collapse. The Mosin Nagant 1891 had become a legend in its own right. Manufactured before the Wright brothers had achieved powered flight, the rifle was eliminating enemies equipped with the most advanced military technology of 1942. Its simple bolt-action mechanism required no electricity, no complex maintenance, no spare parts that couldn't be manufactured in field conditions. The rifle embodied the kind of practical engineering that had enabled the Soviet Union to survive the initial German onslaught. German response to Zaitsev's success had evolved from tactical countermeasures to strategic obsession. Specialized sniper teams were reassigned from other fronts specifically to eliminate the ghost of Stalingrad. Bounties were offered for information leading to his location. Artillery barrages were called in on suspected sniper positions based on the flimsiest intelligence. But Zaitsev had learned to think several moves ahead, to anticipate German reactions, and plan accordingly. His shooting positions were selected not just for tactical advantage, but for escape routes. His camouflage was designed to be effective from multiple angles. Most importantly, he had developed an almost supernatural awareness of when he was being hunted. On December 18th, that awareness saved his life. Positioned in the ruins of the apartment building with a clear shot at German machine gun nest, Zaitsev felt the subtle wrongness that experienced snipers learn to trust. Something in the pattern of enemy movement suggested that his position had been compromised. Rather than take the shot, he began the careful process of withdrawal. The German artillery barrage arrived 14 minutes later, turning his former position into a crater filled with pulverized concrete and twisted steel. Zaitsev, by then safely positioned 3 buildings away, watched the destruction with professional appreciation. The Germans were learning, adapting their tactics to counter his success. The hunt was becoming more dangerous for both predator and prey. German sniper Hans-Joachim Marseille had arrived in Stalingrad with specific orders: eliminate the Soviet sniper whose exploits had become a propaganda disaster for Wehrmacht morale. Marseille brought with him not just exceptional marksmanship skills, but experience gained hunting partisans in occupied territories. He understood the psychology of guerrilla warfare, the patience required for successful counter-sniper operations. The duel between Zaitsev and Marseille would unfold over 8 days, a chess match played with bullets across the frozen wasteland of Stalingrad. Each sniper sought to understand the other's patterns, preferences, and psychological makeup. Each shot taken provided information about tactics and capabilities. Each near miss revealed something about decision-making under pressure. Zaitsev had identified Marseille's presence through careful observation of German movement patterns. New security procedures around sniper positions, different patrol routes, and subtle changes in defensive posture indicated that professional counter-sniper operations were underway. The German sniper was good enough to remain invisible, skilled enough to avoid the obvious mistakes that had claimed his predecessors. The final confrontation came on December 23rd, in the ruins of a chemical plant where both snipers had been maneuvering for positional advantage. Zaitsev had chosen his firing position based on its commanding view of 3 potential German positions. Marseille had selected his location to exploit Soviet sniper movement patterns he had observed over the previous week. Both snipers fired within seconds of each other. Zaitsev's shot, aimed at a muzzle flash he had detected behind a pile of industrial debris, found its target. Marseille's bullet, intended for the Soviet sniper's last known position, struck concrete inches from where Zaitsev's head had been milliseconds before. Confirmed kill 194 ended the most dangerous hunt of Zaitsev's career. But it also marked the beginning of a new phase in the Battle of Stalingrad, as German forces began their final desperate push to capture the city before winter made further offensive operations impossible. Over the following 17 days, Zaitsev would add 31 more confirmed kills to his tally, bringing the total to 225. Each shot supported Soviet defensive efforts that were slowly grinding German offensive capabilities to a halt. Each confirmed kill contributed to the psychological warfare that was becoming as important as artillery or tanks in determining Stalingrad's fate. The Mosin Nagant 1891, despite its age, had proven superior to more modern German sniper rifles in the specific conditions of urban warfare. Its robust construction withstood the debris and abuse of combat in destroyed buildings. Its simple maintenance requirements could be met with basic tools and supplies. Most importantly, its accuracy remained consistent despite the extreme temperatures and environmental conditions that plagued more complex weapons. By January 10, 1943, German forces in Stalingrad had been reduced to isolated pockets of resistance surrounded by Soviet forces that had finally achieved numerical and tactical superiority. The sniper warfare that had claimed so many lives on both sides was ending, not through tactical victory but through strategic exhaustion. The Wehrmacht simply no longer possessed the resources to maintain effective counter-sniper operations. Zaitsev's final confirmed kill came on January 15th, when he eliminated a German machine gun crew that was preventing Soviet forces from advancing through a factory complex. The shot, number 225, traveled 320 meters, through falling snow to find its target. It was, in many ways, typical of the thousands of shots fired during those 40 days in Stalingrad, precise, necessary, and ultimately tragic. The Ghost of Stalingrad had achieved what Soviet propaganda claimed was impossible. He had proven that individual skill and determination could influence the outcome of history's largest military conflict. But the cost had been measured not just in German casualties, but in the psychological toll of taking 225 lives, each one representing someone's son, brother, or father who would never return home. The Mosin Nagant, 1891, that had served as Zaitsev's primary weapon, was eventually retired to a museum, where it became a symbol of Soviet resistance during the Great Patriotic War. Visitors could examine the worn wooden stock, the precisely adjusted scope, and the barrel that had sent death across hundreds of meters with lethal accuracy. But the rifle could not convey the weight of those 40 days, the psychological pressure of hunting and being hunted, or the human cost of warfare measured one shot at a time. Vasily Zaitsev survived the Battle of Stalingrad, survived the war, and lived to see the Soviet Union achieve victory over Nazi Germany. But he carried with him always the memory of those 40 days when he had been transformed from a clerk into a legend, when an antique rifle had become an instrument of historical change, and when the mathematics of death had been calculated, one confirmed kill at a time in the frozen ruins of a city that refused to surrender. The legend of the Ghost of Stalingrad would outlive both the sniper and his rifle, becoming part of the mythology that nations create to make sense of their darkest hours. But the reality had been simpler and more terrible. A young man with steady hands and an old rifle, proving that in warfare, as in hunting, patience and precision could determine the fate of armies.